Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Tjok Gde, a fourth-generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique complementary system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week, I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi everyone and welcome to this two-part special Homeopathy Health Show focusing on the work at the Tirta Usada clinic in Bali. I'm your host, Tjok Gde. My guest for part 1 of this two-part special is Tjok Gde Kerthyasa, who is the founder of the Tirta Usada clinic, who is joining me today all the way from Bali, Indonesia. Tjok is a Balinese-Australian homeopath, health scientist and alchemical explorer. He is the creator of the Transformational Alchemy healing method, the pranafas therapeutic breathing method, and, as mentioned, founder of the Tirta Usada clinic, helping the people of Bali and further afield with all their health needs. Tjok, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Atik. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you.
There's so much to talk about, but I would like to start with the fact that you were actually practicing as a homeopath in Australia before setting up the clinic in Bali itself. So do share how you actually got into homeopathy.
Okay, well, it's a bit of a takes us back to the birth of my oldest son in 2002, where I had developed an interest in Indonesian herbal medicine, Ayurveda, and also nutrition. So I'd actually enrolled in a nutrition course, this was before the time of online. It was actual correspondence. You remember correspondence studying? They send you all the books and the papers and everything. It was great. And so I'd signed up for that. And then I did that. I was into organic farming. At the time, I was actually working in hotel management, helping to run the family business. And I had gone to see a naturopath. I was doing martial arts. I was doing yoga. I was starting to, take care of myself after a few years of hedonism in the hospitality industry. And my son was born, and I remember taking him along to the doctor for his first checkup, and I thought, I really don't have much faith in this medical system in Indonesia. I sort of, no offense to the doctor, I don't even remember his name, but he didn't really seem to care what was happening, and he saw us for 15 minutes, or maybe it was 10 minutes, and then out you go with a bag of pills, and I was like, I can't give this to my son. So I ended up enrolling in the naturopathic course, which was with the same college that I was studying nutrition through, which was the Australasian College of Natural Therapies in Sydney. And I applied for a Bachelor of Health Science naturopathic degree, which they did back then, and ended up moving back to Sydney. So I'd spent, my formative years, all of my schooling in Sydney. So I was very familiar with it and went back to school. And I actually, at the time, I didn't even know what homeopathy was, to be honest with you. I enrolled in the naturopathic course, and during the first few months, I think my son, Adi, became quite sick with bronchitis, and I realized there weren't any herbs or supplements you could really give to an infant. So ironically, my herbal medicine lecturer said, take him along to see a homeopath. And I was like, oh, this is a bit funny. This is a bit strange. What's this about? And so I did and had a miraculous result, So I came into homeopathy as a bit of a doubting Thomas. But to be honest with you, during the first few lectures, when they explained what homeopathy was, my lecturer at the time, I really understood what homeopathy was from my background in the Balinese traditions. And we call it the Agama Tirta, which is the religion of water.
Right.
And I had been part of many pilgrimages to basically collect holy water from many, many different parts throughout Bali and Indonesia as part of some large ceremonies that my family are part of, overseeing these very large scale religious ceremonies in Bali. So every source of water has a memory and it has a particular spiritual significance. And we would sometimes collect up to, 20, 25 different holy waters, mix them all together and use this and consecrate it, and then bless the village and the people. And, it was both healing and harmonizing for the people and for the land. So when homeopathy was explained, I sort of immediately understood what it was all about through that kind of cultural and spiritual background and upbringing that I had. And I took Adi along and terrible cough and a few tries from the homeopath. The last try, I said, this is the last straw. I'll give him one more chance. If he doesn't do it, I'm going to get the antibiotics.
Right.
And he coughed and he vomited and all the mucus came out. He had a little fever, went to sleep, woke up the next morning as right as rain. So and the remedy was Hepasolve. So that was the start. And I actually switched over from naturopathy to focus exclusively on homeopathic medicine, but I continued the Bachelor of Health Science degree. So that's a little snippet into how I got into homeopathy. Being brought up in a paradigm of basically symptom suppression, it does require a leap of faith. But there's also an intuitive knowing when that happens. Sometimes especially as a parent, I think it's a bit different as observing it on your own child. You sort of, there's sometimes just an instinctive knowing that that's the right thing. It feels right. It felt right for some reason. And as homeopaths, we teach that, don't we?
Yes.
to our patients and clients. Yeah.
It's about empowerment at the end of the day, isn't it? It's about
most definitely
having that empowerment and removing that fear, because then diseases are not something to fear. They're a process which you have to go through, and you have to take remedies and whatever it is. And we're going to talk about some of the amazing work you're doing alongside homeopathy. And it's like a complete health unit, and off you go.
Exactly. Yeah. The realization, we are not taught in school that the body can heal itself anymore, but it's actually a universal truth.
Before you moved to Bali, though, how was your practice? You were practicing after your studies in Australia itself?
Yeah, that's right. So I went straight from, I wanted to make sure I went straight into practice because I think, a lot of people graduate in something like homeopathy or naturopathy and they sort of hold back for a little while, and it's very hard to get into practice once you hold back for a while. You've got to, you come out and you continue your education for the rest of your life, basically. But that next 5 years, I think, is the first 5 years of practice is very heavily colored by what we learn, and also by connecting with mentors and colleagues. So I went into practice in Sydney in 2007. I became a member of the Australian Homeopathic Association, and I served on the New South Wales committee. I wanted to immerse myself in homeopathy from every level I possibly could. And I straight away signed up for that. And it's one of the best things I did. And I still have friends and colleagues there. And I went into, funnily enough, I'd lost my job. I was a tea master while I started, while I was studying homeopathy. I joined a tea company and went from a shop assistant all the way up to the guy who buys and tastes their teas. And then the tea company sold to Coca-Cola, and I lost my job immediately. So with a child and a family in Sydney, it was a bit of a blow. So a friend of mine had opened a cafe, a Spanish cafe. And so I went there and I washed dishes, made coffees, waited tables, with this new degree. And God works in mysterious ways, as we say. And it happened that cafe was across the road from something called the Blues Point Practice, which was run by an acupuncturist, Trudy Zip, wonderful practitioner who's still in practice. And she would come across and get her salad sandwiches every day. And she found out I just graduated, and she sort of looked at me and she said, do you want to come and work in my practice? And I was like, yeah, I would, And she said, I'll just give you 1 day a week. I've got a room there. And so I started my first practice there, 1 day a week. I paid more in rent than I made in fees for the first couple of years. And then I was very fortunate to see a little advertisement in one of the journals that the eminent homeopath Peter Tomanello in Sydney had an opening in his clinic. So I applied for that, and I ended up working those two clinics. And so Peter was really one of my first big mentors in homeopathy. I'm very, very grateful for all that I learned in his practice. And he introduced me first to also kinesiology in homeopathy, to the gemstones. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work. And I did the postgraduate course with Alistair Gray. He ended up becoming also another great mentor of mine in Sydney. And I would go back to Bali every year for holidays. Sort of a month holiday. And what happened was, your first few years of practice in Sydney is a pretty hard gig. Australians are, natural therapies in Australia, it's, I take my hat off to all the practitioners there, because it's not easy.
Well, how do you mean?
I ended up being busier treating people in Bali while I was on holiday than I was in Sydney.
Why do you say it was difficult in Australia? Why is that? The mindset,
Australia's a hard gig, Homeopathy is not liked. All of that kind of stuff. It's completely different to Indonesia, where 95% of the population uses natural medicine. That's
huge. A phenomenal percentile, that is, isn't it?
It's huge. Not just natural medicine. Doctors refer people to shamans here. There's a shaman 24-hour on staff at the public hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a completely different climate, and I felt really called actually to come to Bali, to come home and to establish a practice here. So in 2009 I moved back here. It was difficult to leave Sydney and to leave my practice there. I still remember the day I needed my last day. I burst into tears, and Peter gave me a dose of Ignatia. I still remember that. But the rest is history. I started off just practicing out of my house and doing a lot of house calls, and I was pretty much busy from the get-go here.
But what was the main focus? Was it really just for you to be able to expand your horizons, for you to develop, as in specifically moving to Bali, or was it this huge percentile of, such a large majority of the population are aware of natural therapy, natural remedies, naturopathy, natural medicine, homeopathy? That must have been part of the decision, because that's such fertile land, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it was it was really a call to come back to the roots, and also, there are hardly any homeopaths in Indonesia. Homeopathy itself, herbal medicine is huge here. Chinese medicine's quite big. Various form, there's the you were gonna ask about ethnobotany. It's every culture in Indonesia, and Indonesia is made up of many different cultures. I mean, we have 3,000 different languages here. So every island has its own system of natural medicine, of healing. It was part of how people survived. There's no medical system that's going to take care of you. So, yeah.
That's the beauty, isn't it, Tjok?
It is. People become self-reliant, self-sufficient, and open-minded. It felt welcoming, actually. Coming to Indonesia I was welcomed, here, and homeopathy was sort of a system that really slotted in very nicely with the existing systems here, and also the mindset of people. You see, people in Indonesia have a lot of faith, and I think that word. I think that's
a very important word. It's a
very important word. I mean, in certain religions and spiritual traditions, it's everything. On the zodiac, it's the last. It's Pisces. It's the last step of the zodiac. Once you've gone through the whole hero's journey, you come to faith. To God consciousness, self-realization.
I'm a Pisces, by the way.
Are you? Okay, there you go.
and funnily enough, I love the month of March. I absolutely love it because my birthday or birth date falls in March. And so for some strange reason, we're going off tangent slightly, but
that's all right.
I just come alive in March. It's just so beautiful for me. I don't know those feelings. I can't share them. Sometimes it's very difficult to construct words to share sentiments or emotions,
Yes.
But it's just, I don't know, it's just that the vital force comes alive, and I get such a rush and a boost, and life is brilliant. I'm not saying the rest of the months I'm down in the dumps, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's just I know, and it's nothing related to my birth date. It's I'm well past that age of remembering when it was, but it's more to do with it's just this feeling, you feel alive, you feel brilliant about things.
The constellation of the year, it's and we all feel different at different times. It's some of us.
We were talking about faith, and it's fascinating, Tjok, what you're saying, because as you were actually saying that, I was just thinking that it's so nice. It's like saying, you're a manifestation of having achieved this anyway, because you moved from Australia, which is a very built up area, to the beautiful place of Bali, which is totally different dynamics, totally. So it's like in English, you say from the city you want to move to the countryside, and that's very applicable as a metaphor for the way people think, because what you're saying is that the people of Indonesia are, like I mentioned earlier, the pastures are fresh, the grass is cut.
People who have to be self-reliant, they become actually quite objective in what they use, and they will happily, science is not a religion here. That's the thing. And again, I use that word cautiously because, often we say science and people automatically imply that we're talking about the reductionistic, mechanistic, material science paradigm, which is only one aspect of science, isn't it? And there's quantum physics. There's the noetic science. I mean, there's, Rudolf Steiner coined the term spiritual science, which takes into account the physical as well as the non-physical. And so, in Indonesia, people have a deep faith in the divine, in God, firstly. And then from there, everything else is to help, God's will. So they're not going to swear allegiance to any particular paradigm. They swear allegiance on nothing but the divine or God. And if homeopathy works, they'll use it, And chemical medicine works and serves them for a time, they'll use it. And if herbs work, they'll use it. So it was, in a way, kind of an irony that it's actually a more objective way, which is what should really be the basis of science. Yeah.
I think it's for want of a better word, it's healthy nutrition, isn't it, for the mind? Literally, because you're taking everything in moderation, and there's some days where you may take maybe it may be useful to take something which is not homeopathic. In other days it may be, and it may be conventional medicine, but it's the best, and it's amalgamating everything. But ultimately it goes down to the individual and the fact that they are they're open-minded. They're willing to do this, and it's a no-brainer as such as well, which is very important.
It's sort of, and it's even I love the fact that they're actually blasé about it. We're blasé about it here. I've had people come in and they say, "Oh yeah, my friend referred me to you because the cancer went away after one session with you." And I'm like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Oh wow!" And he goes, "Yeah, of course it was gonna." I was like, "What? Don't get excited about it. That's normal. That's why they came and they paid you for treatment. Get over yourself." So, in a way, there's that sort of we like to, I think, especially in the West, almost every cure is like, "Oh wow, this is a miracle, amazing." He was like, "No, well, of course that was going to happen anyway, wasn't it? I get over it."
I tell you, Tjok, it's the beauty of it is, and I see this in you as well, by the way. So, I'm gonna big you up as such, but it's the simplicity of things which actually make them more effective, and they resound, and as a result, the vibrations become. Your vibration is able to resonate with so many others.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. Yeah.
What did you have the idea already moving to Bali about setting up the Tirta Usada clinic, or was that something that developed later on?
Well, when I moved here, I didn't have visions of making a clinic. I just wanted to practice, in my whatever room I had, make a little clinic, and just be I think, especially at the beginning of practice, you're just happy to have even a few patients a day. And so that was already, my mind hadn't gone into anything larger than that. I ended up teaming up with a natural medicine collective that was in an area called Seminyak here, which is now sort of a beach club, nightclub, cool area down near the beach. And there were osteopaths, who became very good friends of mine, Jonathan, Lefebvre, Delphine. There were psychologists, and so I joined their outfit as well. So I had my home gig, and then I had a couple of days down with them, and that clinic ended up disbanding, and I bought the owners out, and I set up Tirta Usada in that clinic in 2014. So up until then, I'd just been in private practice. And because I saw the energy that's also generated when holistic practitioners of, the same basic philosophy come together, you get also an exponential effect. We had acupuncture, osteopathy, hypnotherapy, all sorts of different interesting modalities come through. And that ran in, I kept that one going up until, when was that? About 2018, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And then I moved my I'd always kept my my Ubud practice going in my room here, which is in the family property. And then I thankfully, actually, I closed that down not too long before COVID hit, because that would have been a disaster, actually. So everything worked out well. But that was the springboard for creating this collective. And so, yeah, I've kept that going here, and we have different modalities come through here. And it also gave me an opportunity to focus more on the lab, because I love making medicines as well as prescribing them.
Right.
I love it. I've always been into brewing stuff up, and I was very lucky actually in my education to have, we had homeopathic pharmacy as a subject, and my lecturer was Peter Berryman, who was actually an alchemist as well as a naturopath and a homeopath. I took a liking to him, and he took a liking to me, and he saw that I was very curious about it, and I think I'd gone into my local library in North Sydney actually and looked for whatever book I could find on homeopathy. And the only one they had, I think they had two books in there. One was like a sort of a home prescriber, and the other one was about, and I can't remember the author or the exact title, but it was basically the alchemic. It was all about the connection with homeopathy and alchemy, the tradition of alchemy, and how much of homeopathy actually came from that tradition. So I sort of devoured that book, and then I put a few extra questions to Peter, and he explained to me the method of spagyric extractions in alchemy, in practical plant alchemy, and got me onto the work of Manfred Unius. He was really, one of the authorities on. He's passed away now, and I bought his book. I kind of tried to get into it. It took me years actually to work out how to actually do it, and I ended up just making my own method. But that sort of took me into the realm of alchemy, and it had always been something that I'd been curious about. So and I was I'd always looked at homeopathy as, there's something in this, and then I came across the work of my another wonderful homeopath who opened up a lot for me from your neck of the woods, Ian Watson.
Brilliant. Yes, Ian's on actually very soon.
Is he really? Say hi from me.
I will.
I actually went to, one of the reasons I went to England was to meet with Ian, and we spent half a day together in Hampstead Heath. And
charming place.
Very lovely place. Yeah. And I wanted to say thanks to him for putting out his series on alchemy and homeopathy. So I would say really his work was the basis as well for me to make those connections between alchemy and homeopathy. Yeah.
You mentioned spagyric, and you know that
Yes.
Within homeopathy now, there are a number of, especially in Germany, manufacturers of spagyric homeopathic remedies. Predominantly, it's to do with the mineral content, isn't it? The ash.
The ash, that mysterious calcination process. Yeah. Yeah, really, as soon as I read about what is, really the basis behind spagyrics, the body, the soul, and the spirit. I mean, this is really what we're working with as practitioners anyway, isn't it?
Fascinating story, all this. Now, moving to Bali itself, which of course is very, very beautiful. I think you can go out to beautiful scenes, and I can go out and see the neighbor's house. So there you go. Hey, put it into perspective. That's the way it is. But I was going to ask you about Balinese medicine, and also something you mentioned, which is ethnobotany. If you can be kind enough to elaborate, because I think that will be quite useful for the listeners. Very interesting to know what Balinese medicine is, as in what types of herbs or it incorporates as such. Sure.
Well, I mean, I might just start off with ethnobotany because it's a very succinct explanation. Really, it's the botanical knowledge of a particular ethnic culture or ethnicity, particularly related to the cultures of an area, of a region. So, you have the ethnobotany of the Amazon and the various tribes in the Amazon. You have the ethnobotany. I mean, Indonesia is the second most biodiverse, medicinally biodiverse region in the world after the Amazon, second only to the Amazon.
Right.
So, we have the word ethnobotany here is extremely relevant. It applies to every island, and even on one island, you can have ethnobotanical regions and knowledge that differ between regions, and it's incredibly diverse. So yeah, ethnobotany is really the study of botany, particularly it's not just therapeutically, it's also, agriculturally and culinary. But yeah, through the understanding of how that has been handed down, mostly through oral traditions in a given ethnicity or culture, unique to a particular region. So that's really the kind of umbrella, I guess, succinct definition of what ethnobotany is. And it really applies to what we do in Indonesia in the different regions. And Bali has its own ethnobotanical, but also system. It's not just limited to plants, actually. There's a system of healing here, which we call Usada. Usada means healing, basically. And there are several different classes of healers in Bali. So you have the Balian Usada, and Balian basically translates as seer, a seer.
Right.
A shaman or a seer. And so you have ones who specialize when it's Balian Usada, they learn their craft, like we learned how to practice homeopathy, or you learn herbal medicine or anything. So it's a learned craft, and there are sacred texts written in the traditional on the palm leaves, actually, a little bit like in southern India. We use the same method actually for recording things. That they last a very long time. They're incredible. Writing on palm leaves, and so they're called lontar. So the lontars are the sacred texts written in our ancient script, Kawi. And so you can learn that, and it's usually handed down through families. So I do come from a family who are keepers of these texts.
Oh, fascinating.
So
Do tell more.
I have, one of my late uncles was really one of the most famous Balinese healers on the island. He passed away recently at the age of 92 and was still treating people up until the end, really up until just not long before he passed. I call Bali a medieval society that's still operating in the modern day. We have blacksmiths that still use fire. We have, the wood carvers, the carpenters that still, they'll build a whole house just by hand completely. The thatchers for the roofs. And I think
that's important though, isn't it?
Yeah. The farmers, we still farm our own, plant our own food, farm it. And, you've got your fishermen, generations, and it goes down through the generations. You have your priests, you have all of this. So, one of the callings in that lineage is to be a healer. Yeah.
Amazing. And in your generation, are you the only healer?
Well, I have an older cousin who also has taken that on. Yeah. Right. So I'll actually sometimes refer people to him.
Tjok, the work you're doing is absolutely amazing. And actually, I must say a very big thank you to Yagoda for actually introducing us, which is brilliant. As a new friendship has formed as well, too, actually.
Yes.
So, that's just brilliant in itself. But
thanks, Yagoda.
Yeah, I'll tell her after the podcast as well.
Yep.
Now, you do so many workshops, and I have heard, on good authority, of course, that they are really phenomenal and they're very knowledgeable. So do give us an idea of sort of the workshops and the retreats. And I know you do courses as well, and what's involved, what you're sort of focusing on, and this journey that you're taking your students on.
Well, I think we all come to a point, perhaps, in our practice where we want to share something, and we want to bring something to the lives of others. And I went through a bit of a process with thinking. It was almost a frustration, actually. It was, I wish people could do this on their own. So, and in Indonesia, like I was saying before, people have a thirst to learn this. They really want to learn. And so in around 2016, on the behest, I'd been pestered by many of my patients in Jakarta. They'd been saying, come on, you got to run a course for us. You got to teach us how to do this. And I'm like, I never wanted, I'd never thought about teaching, to be honest. It scared me a little bit. I felt a large amount of responsibility. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist sometimes. And, you procrastinate on these things and you put it off and off and off. And I remember I went along to two lectures done by anthroposophists. So Waldorf Steiner teachers, because I'm also part of the founding of the first Waldorf Steiner school in Bali as well, along with many other, well, not many, a couple of other parents who we all got together and decided to make this. And I remember watching, because anthroposophy is also, I have to mention that it's really one of the philosophies that lies behind a lot of the work that I do, and how I'm actually able to explain homeopathy to people. And I watched these teachers give lectures, and I was thinking, how do I put my PowerPoint presentation together? How do I do this and that? How do I make it look schmicko, and stood up and said, we don't use microphones and we don't use PowerPoint presentations. And they wrote it beautifully by hand on a blackboard.
Right.
And I felt this level of warmth in engagement. And I remembered everything I learned on those few days. And after that, I was like, I can do this now, because that's actually how I want to teach. So to this day, I think I've used a PowerPoint maybe in a couple of my lectures, and they're the cop-out ones. I often don't use them anymore. People fall asleep. So all of my teaching is done mostly without microphones, unless it's larger audiences. I do obviously do online, so I record it as well. But yeah, it's all done by hand. And my first one was really, and my first, and I still remain. I just taught this last week, is the healing power of homeopathy, and I describe it as a course for anybody who wants to learn about homeopathy, that encapsulates about 1 year of what I learned in university in 2 days.
Wow.
So, it is ambitious. Unfortunately, the proof is in the pudding that I've continued teaching that course from 2016 until now, sometimes up to 5 times a year. So the group that I have, half of them drop. They're like, "No, this is too much," and that's okay. But the proof is that what has happened is an entire community has grown from that, of both lay people, doctors, dentists, psychologists, corporate high flyers, police, people from all walks of life in that group. It's at about 400, maybe 500 people now, 2 WhatsApp groups, and everyone helps each other. I think I was inspired by reading the history of homeopathy in America. There's nothing more rewarding for me than to see people do that work on their own, and you'd be surprised that I've got midwives on there. I've got I've got celebrities, movie stars, singers. It's an amazing group.
Admirable achievement indeed. Congratulations actually on achieving this, and not because it's and of course you know the answer to what I'm going to say, but not because of anything that you want in return, but the fact that you've empowered so many people, and that's just a good thing. There's nothing There's nothing that's negative in that. It's only positive, and it only leads to more positivity, more proactivity, and also being what's the word? Being grateful, being grateful that you're able to heal diseases. You can make friends along the way. It's a community, isn't it? It's amazing.
Community. That's how we're going to survive. That's how, not survive. That's how we're going to thrive. Is by building these communities and by and also by demystifying homeopathy a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
And one thing that I'm a bit of a slow learner, so I go out of my way to try and explain things in a way that people can understand from all sorts of backgrounds. And a lot of actually, I took a lot from Rudolf Steiner's work. And as we know, anthroposophic medicine used a lot of homeopathic principles and potentization and so on and so forth. And also alchemy, by the way. Steiner himself, he was definitely an alchemist. He knew a lot of that. And some of the ways to describe the etheric body and how it works, expands on how Hahnemann described the vital force, and I even go into the other bodies, the astral body, the emotions, and the spirit, so on and so forth, which also corresponds directly, because Steiner took a lot of his work from the Vedas, sacred texts from India, which are also here, and that explanation makes a lot of sense to Indonesians.
Now, Tjok, apart from you are, for no fault of your own, a celebrity as well in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, I hear, because of your TV show, which was, or TV program rather, or series, called Nature Life. So, is that something that you're going to be doing more of, or was that like a one-off series?
Well, it ran a season. We did 36 episodes. It was quite an extensive piece of work there filmed over a bit over a year. It was on network TV. It was sort of a prime time Saturday 9 a.m. show for parents at home predominantly. And after that I did a few sort of mini documentaries for some herbal medicine companies. Ironically, you asked me that question today. I've just actually come down from the volcano Batur, filming a documentary up there. Well, I'm having a documentary filmed about me by two Hungarian filmmakers, Ondras and Esther, who have just finished a series of documentaries on Gabor Mate. I don't know if you know Dr. Gabor Mate.
No.
He works on a lot of trauma healing and things like that. And he actually asked me that question. He said, "Don't you want to start filming again? Don't you want to do something?" And I sat down and I thought, you know what? I wouldn't mind it, actually, to be honest. It was a lot of fun. We went on some crazy adventures. I jumped off 15-meter waterfalls and I went paragliding while making, Apis mellifica in a village in Java, or like getting some sepia out of the sea in Lombok and I actually potentized it on the beach in Lombok. I mean, there's some interesting stuff in that. Wow. But it's not out of the question. But at the moment, my focus is really on education. And just to finish up on your last question, I don't think, I didn't talk about the retreats that I've been running, which are basically nature immersion retreats based on the elements, where we also look at, I've studied breathing methods like Buteyko and pranayama. So I put together a method of I don't like to call it breath work because it gets thrown around so much, but it's corrective breathing techniques, basically, which are very effective for things like asthma and all sorts of, even sinusitis, rhinitis, but also the nervous system, the vagus nerve and the importance of that, and realizing that, yes, we can give medicines, here and there we can get all fancy with that, but if we're not breathing properly, it's really the foundation of life. It's the thread that attaches us to, you know, the soul and the spirit to the body. So I've been running those, you know, where we get into nature, we look at the element of fire on one day, the element of water on the next, the element of earth, air, and finally ether.
You know, the last question I have for you, and this is by no means the last question per se. What I mean is I do certainly hope that you will come back later this year and we can talk a bit more about this amazing work that you're doing. But I wanted to end with something light-hearted, or maybe it's not, I don't know, depends. But
Okay.
as a tea lover and you being a tea master, tell me, what is the best tea?
What is the best tea? Oh, that's a hard one. Well, you can see I'm here with my teapot.
Yes, I see that.
I'm drinking a herbal blend that I grow myself up here in the Highlands. This is a Jupiter tea, so very good for the liver and the gallbladder. The best tea in the world is the tea that I grow myself in Bali. I'm gonna unashamedly say that. So I went from buying tea from all over the world to saying, actually, you know what I want to do? I want to grow tea myself in Bali, and nobody had done it before. So my brother and I give full credit actually to my brother. He found the land. He sent me a photograph by phone when I was still living in Australia. He said, "Do you think you can grow tea on this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, good," because a guy had lost all his money gambling and was desperate to sell this piece of land in the islands on a lake. And so we ended up getting tea plants from Java. Tea grows very well in Indonesia. Indonesia was one of the first countries outside of China and Japan to grow tea. Even before India, the Dutch beat the English. So the Dutch smuggled tea here. And so we have very old tea plantations in Java, and we ended up sending 100 tea plants over here, and we planted them up at about 1,200 meters above sea level. And so, yeah, we have a little tea garden up there, about half a hectare, and we hand roll it, hand process it, fire it on wood, and that's the best tea for me in the world. Yeah.
You must send me some pictures.
We make it ourselves.
Send me some pics and I'll share them on socials.
Yeah. Well, if I get, well, you might get over here, or I might get to England. It's on the cards for me.
Good.
So I'll bring you a pack.
Okay. I look forward to that.
We call it Naga Loka.
Naga Loka. Okay.
Yeah.
I look forward to that very much. Tjok, it's been an absolute pleasure, honor to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much, and please do keep in mind that I will be asking you back later this year.
Well, look, the honor and the privilege is all mine, and you're too kind. Yeah, I really do appreciate your kind words and your encouragement, and what you're doing with putting this information out to many people, both homeopaths and otherwise. So yeah, it's really important for maintaining the community, and I think that's crucial to what we need. You know, more than ever, people need this, don't they?
Yes.
Now more than ever. Yeah,
absolutely. And I found that this podcast, this show on UK Health Radio is becoming the voice of homeopathy, you know, on radio and podcast. Wow. And
amazing.
It's just very humbling. Very humbling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I take my hat off to you. Thank you for taking the time and for doing the good work. Yeah.
Thank you. And that was part one of this two-part special homeopathy health show focusing on the Tirta Usada clinic and their work and efforts in healing and all things homeopathy. Next week, for part two, I'll be speaking to Tjok Gde Kerthyasa, who is not only a homeopath, but also an author of some ebooks and a student of the Transformational Alchemy practitioner's course, and she'll be sharing her experiences, her journey to homeopathy, which actually started in the UK and found itself all the way in Bali. So do stay tuned for the next episode, which is next week. And if you follow my socials, Instagram is _treatslike. If you follow that, you'll have all the latest trailers which accompany each episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Until next week, stay safe. I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far. And of course, you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.